Imagine for a moment living in the kind of neighborhood where the sun always seems to shine just a little brighter and the sound of children's laughter echoes down tree-lined streets. A place where everyone knows everyone, where the days unfold peacefully and each night you lock your doors with the quiet confidence that nothing could ever disrupt this serene little corner of the world. But for Anna Mae Florence, that peacefulness would shatter in an instant. That one fateful night, when the unexpected knock came at her door, was the moment everything changed. But this was no ordinary knock. To Anna Mae, it was the kind of knock you ignore, the kind you hear every day, no reason to be alarmed. Until that single sound shattered the calm. She opened her door, and what followed was a nightmare she could never have imagined. What if that scream wasn't the beginning of the story? What if it was the end of a twisted plot that had been months, maybe even years in the making? What if someone had been watching, waiting? And what if they thought they'd gotten away with it? Today, we take you deep into a case that went cold for 27 years, a brutal stabbing that seemed destined to remain unsolved forever. But what if the key to unlocking it was always closer than anyone realized? A shocking twist turned everything upside down, and the truth that had been buried for over 2 decades finally began to emerge. How far could someone go to cover up a crime? And what happens when the truth, no matter how long it takes, finally finds its way to the surface? Stay with us as we unravel the chilling details of Anna Mae Florence's murder and the years of secrets that finally came to light. June 27th, 1987, on a bright, sun-soaked morning in Columbus, Ohio, Anna Mae Florence, 77 years old, was preparing for what she hoped would be another peaceful day. With her white curtains gently fluttering in the breeze and the quiet of the neighborhood outside, it seemed like any other ordinary morning. She had no way of knowing that when she stepped to the door, it would be the last time she ever took another breath. It was a woman at the door, a stranger, dressed in a simple cardigan and slacks, a clipboard in hand. She claimed to be raising money for a charity to support the elderly, a good cause, or so it seemed. Anna Mae opened the door expecting nothing more than a polite conversation, but this was no friendly volunteer. This was a face, a facade carefully crafted to lull Anna Mae into a false sense of security. Neighbors recalled later seeing this same young woman going door to door throughout the morning, asking for donations. She was charming, calm, and seemed entirely harmless. No one suspected a thing. After all, who would ever suspect that a friendly face, carrying nothing more than a clipboard and a smile, could hide such darkness? What makes us so easily trust the strangers who knock on our doors? What is it about the human instinct to help, to trust, that makes us vulnerable to those who seek to exploit it? For Anna Mae, the decision was simple. She wasn't going to turn down someone asking for help. The stranger, sweetly persuasive, stepped into the warmth of her home. But as soon as the door clicked shut behind her, the atmosphere shifted. It said that, in those final moments, Anna Mae felt something shift in the air, a presence she couldn't quite explain. That fleeting instinct, a sense of unease, that would have saved her life had she only acted on it. What happened next would forever haunt anyone who knew Anna Mae. She never had a chance to scream, to fight back. The knife came swiftly, and the stranger's smile twisted into something far more menacing. What drives a person to commit such an unthinkable act? What dark secrets were concealed beneath that innocent facade? And what would it take for a woman to believe that she could get away with murder? But this wasn't just a tragic murder. This was the beginning of a cold case that would stay unsolved for 27 long years. The question echoed in the dark corridors of justice. Who could have done such a thing, and why? What had the stranger come for? And what was it that made her think she could escape without a trace? How could a woman, a stranger to the community, vanish without a trace? Leaving no clue, no answer, no reason to suspect foul play? What twisted chain of events could lead to such a chilling crime? Anna Mae Florence had no way of knowing that the woman standing at her door that day, the one asking for donations to help the elderly, was no ordinary solicitor. She welcomed her inside, thinking nothing of it, unaware that in a matter of moments her life would be ripped away. What happened next was a horrifying betrayal of trust. As the door closed behind them, a struggle erupted, a violent, chaotic clash of life and death. As the two women fought desperately, it became clear that this wasn't a robbery or a simple misunderstanding. The charity worker wasn't there for donations. She was there to take a life. Anna Mae's frantic struggle was met with violent force that ended in tragedy. As the door to her apartment was flung open in the heat of the chaos, a horrifying scene awaited the unthinkable. Anna Mae's screams echoed through the halls. It was her sister and brother-in-law who had arrived to take her shopping that fateful morning, only to hear the desperate cry for help, too late to stop the unimaginable. Anna Mae's sister and brother-in-law rushed into the apartment, only to find a scene that no one should ever have to witness. Blood everywhere, her body crumpled on the floor, lifeless. The woman who had once welcomed a stranger into her home was now a victim in a brutal, senseless attack. The murderer, in a frantic escape, left behind only questions and a trail of blood. A chilling sight that would haunt her family forever. And just like that, the quiet suburban morning was shattered. Never to be the same again. What does it feel like to arrive just moments too late? To hear a scream but be powerless to stop what's happening? To see the aftermath of violence and know there's nothing you can do to reverse it? What kind of pain does that leave behind? The morning after Anna Mae Florence's brutal murder, the quiet neighborhood was consumed by a different kind of silence. The kind only tragedy can bring. As the police arrived at the scene, the bloodstains on the floor seemed to tell a story that words couldn't capture. The door, once a symbol of safety, now stood ajar, a grim gateway to a crime that would haunt the city for years. Investigators quickly moved in, their footsteps heavy on the floorboards, each piece of evidence scrutinized under the cold glow of harsh overhead lights. But there were no fingerprints, no DNA, and no witnesses to the attack, only a trail of confusion and a chilling sense that the killer had vanished into thin air. The initial investigation revealed little. A neighbor had seen a woman leaving the apartment in a hurry, but the description was vague: tall, slender, wearing a simple dress, with no distinct features that could help identify her. The case quickly went cold. Over the next few months, detectives pursued dozens of leads, chasing down any hint of the killer's identity. But each attempt hit a dead end, and with her, the answers that might have brought justice. Months passed, then years. The case grew cold, its details slipping from the forefront of the public's memory. The press moved on to the next story, and the police, once hopeful of a quick resolution, began to treat the case like so many others that had been buried in the archives of unsolved crimes. But the Florence family didn't let go. They clung to the hope that one day someone would remember, someone would speak out, and justice would be served. But some cases never truly die. They stay alive in the hearts of those who refuse to forget, in the minds of investigators who won't stop seeking the truth, no matter how cold the trail becomes. What does it take for a case to stay alive in the hearts of investigators when the world has moved on? How far are they willing to go, knowing that time can bury even the darkest secrets. 26 years passed since Anna Mae Florence's death, the case all but forgotten by most. The files were buried under piles of other unsolved cases, each year making the search for justice feel more impossible. But justice, as it turns out, has a way of resurfacing when you least expect it. In 2013, the Columbus Police Department's Cold Case Squad decided to take another look at Anna Mae's murder. Detective Kathy Justice, a seasoned investigator with a sharp mind, sat down at the cluttered desk, flipping through the old files. Beside her was her partner, Ralph Taylor, a no-nonsense detective who'd seen his share of unsolved mysteries. Together, they began the painstaking task of reviewing the case, yet something had changed. Technology had advanced, and fresh perspectives could breathe new life into old evidence. At first, it seemed like a long shot, a name that had never appeared on the original police reports: Zena Roberson. She had lived quietly in Georgia for nearly 2 decades, far from the scene of the crime, but something in the DNA samples collected from Anna Mae's apartment matched a record in the database. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the dark truth behind a case that had remained unsolved for over a quarter of a century. The breakthrough they'd been waiting for had finally arrived. Zena Roberson, who had vanished from public view all those years ago, was now at the center of an investigation that no one had expected. How had she managed to stay under the radar for so long? What had driven her to take Anna Mae's life that day, all those years ago? The chilling reality was clear. Zena Roberson, the once innocent-looking charity worker, was now the prime suspect in a murder that had haunted the city of Columbus for decades. How is it possible that one breakthrough, one piece of technology, can breathe new life into a cold case, making the passage of time seem irrelevant? Can science truly erase the years that have gone by? Or does it simply allow the truth to emerge when it's finally ready to be told? As the detectives prepared to confront Zena Roberson, they knew this was the moment they had been waiting for. A case that had long been a shadow on their careers was now on the verge of being solved. But how much would they uncover about the woman who had once seemed so harmless? And how far would she go to protect the secret that had remained hidden for so long? In 2014, nearly 3 decades after Anna Mae Florence's brutal murder, the investigation finally took a startling turn. Zena Roberson, the woman who had seemingly vanished from the radar of law enforcement, was now living a quiet life in Georgia. For years, she had been blending into the background, living without suspicion. But in the wake of new forensic evidence, the police could no longer ignore the truth. The detectives from Columbus, Ohio, boarded a plane to Georgia, carrying with them the weight of a cold case that had haunted an entire city. When they landed, they were ready to bring Zena back for questioning. The truth, once elusive, was now within reach. For Zena Roberson, the past had finally come to claim her. A 27-year-old mystery had been unraveled. The rest was a victory for justice, but it also raised even darker questions. How had she lived so long without arousing suspicion? How had she become a murderer? Zena Roberson, once an ordinary woman, had transformed into something unrecognizable, someone capable of murder, capable of taking a life so violently? What had happened to her in those years before the crime? What was the catalyst that turned an everyday life into one of horrifying violence? What drives a person to kill? What kind of darkness, buried deep inside, leads to an unthinkable crime like this? Is there always a clear motive, or can violence erupt from the shadows of a person's mind, hidden away until it bursts forth with deadly force? What makes someone walk down that path of no return? Now with Xena in custody, the police would finally have the chance to piece together the puzzle of Anime Florence's murder. But the real question remained. What had driven Xena Roberson to kill? What had she hidden in her past that led her to commit such a horrific act? What is the breaking point? At what moment does a person who once seemed harmless cross the line and become capable of murder? How does one piece together the fractured psyche of a killer after so many years? Xena Roberson's arrest brought the long-awaited relief to the family of Anime Florence. But as the wheels of justice slowly turned and the courtroom doors closed behind her, it became clear that the resolution of this case raised questions far bigger than the details of the crime itself. For the Florence family, it was a moment of closure, but also one of painful reflection. How does one carry the weight of such a violent, unspeakable act for so many years, hidden behind a mask of normalcy? And for Xena, what kind of toll does it take to live with a secret so dark for more than 2 decades? As the case was finally brought to a close, the ripple effects were felt not just in Columbus, but across the entire community, where the passage of time had created a gap between truth and justice. But as the case closed, questions lingered. What happens to a person who carries such a dark secret for so long? And how does a crime so cold remain unsolved for decades, only to be unlocked by a single piece of new technology? The passage of time might bring peace, but it also reveals the scars that remain behind. Justice is served, but the wounds of the past may never fully heal. Xena Roberson's arrest may have brought an end to this particular story, but the questions it raised about human nature, justice, and forgiveness remain with us. What do you think? Can true justice ever be fully served after such a long time? And what toll does the passage of time take on those involved in such tragic events? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and join the conversation. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.